Do you want to take your drawings from this to this? With these techniques, you'll see improvements right away. In this art tutorial, I'll show you how to draw a realistic portrait step by step. I'll show you common mistakes beginners make and how to fix them so that your drawings look more realistic. You'll see how easy it can be. So let's get started. Let's start with the don't side first. One common mistake I see is pressing the pencil too hard right from the beginning. When you press too hard, it flattens the tooth of the paper, making it much harder to layer colors later on. Another issue is the lack of color variety. Using only a few shades doesn't create enough depth. Because I pressed the pencils too hard and didn't leave any space for the highlights, it was really difficult to add them later and they barely showed up. Also, the eyebrow and the eyelashes are too rigid and straight, creating harsh, unrealistic lines that don't look natural. For the nose, I'm pressing too hard with the pencils and I'm not leaving any space for the highlights, and as a result, the transition from the contours of the nose to the highlights don't look smooth or natural, which flattens the overall shape. For the lips, I used only 1 or 2 pencils and I pressed too hard, which flattened the texture. And without leaving space for the highlight, the lips lack dimension and don't look three-dimensional. Now for the skin, a common mistake is using just one tone and pressing too hard. This makes the shading look really dull and unnatural, giving the skin an unrealistic look. Also, I'm not blending the highlights into the shadows very well, which creates a choppy, harsh look instead of a smooth, natural transition. So let me show you a much better way to create a realistic portrait. Before you start, I recommend using a kneaded eraser to gently lift the graphite pencil lines so they don't show through your colored pencil layers while still leaving a faint outline of your sketch visible. Start with a light touch and slowly build up your layers. I'm using light pressure to create a soft base layer. I'm also using small circular motions as to not overload the paper and damage it. The key is to use soft pressure so that you can easily add more layers and colors later. As I layer, I make sure to vary the colors. Adding in unexpected shades, such as browns and yellows, can bring richness to the iris, even if the eye color is blue-green like this one. By using multiple colors and keeping the pressure light, the colors can blend smoothly for a more natural look. A helpful tip is to study your reference photo closely and match the colors and tones you see. You can also use a white pencil to soften transitions, add details, and even lighten the colors. Remember, the more layers and colors you build up, the more realistic the result will be. Now moving on to the whites of the eyes. It's important to remember that they aren't purely white. Instead, they're a subtle mix of gray tones, sometimes with hints of soft peaches, depending on the lighting and surrounding colors. These tones add dimension and make the eye look more three-dimensional. Without them, the eye can appear flat and unnatural. Paying attention to shadows, highlights, and reflections will really improve the overall realism of your drawing. For the eyelid skin, I recommend using soft, gradual layers and leave space where the highlight of the eyelid is. I like to vary the pressure of my pencil depending on where there are more shadows or where it's more of a highlight area. Moving on to the eyebrow, I like to start with a base layer of skin tones to create a soft base that blends naturally with the surrounding area. Then I gradually build up the layers of the eyebrow using light strokes to mimic the natural direction and flow of the hairs. For the final layer, it's really important to use a very sharp pencil to get those fine, precise details that resemble individual eyebrow hairs. Vary the length and thickness of the strokes slightly to avoid a rigid or unnatural look. Pay close attention to your reference photo to capture the natural arch and texture, and don't forget to add subtle highlights or lighter hairs for added depth and realism. This technique helps to create a soft and defined eyebrow that really improves the overall realism of your portrait. For the eyelashes, I like to use a mix of dark brown and black to create depth and dimension. This combination helps the lashes look more natural and less harsh than using pure black alone. Keeping your pencil sharp is really important for precision, as it allows you to draw fine tapered lines that mimic the natural shape of eyelashes. The top lashes are usually thicker, darker, and longer than the bottom lashes. Pay attention to the direction and spacing of the lashes. They aren't all perfectly aligned, so adding in the slight variations will help them look more natural. Let's move on to the nose. For a realistic look, start by keeping a light pencil pressure and gradually build up the layers. Avoid adding color to the center of the nose right away, as this is where the highlight will go. Leaving this area untouched initially makes it easier to create a three-dimensional effect later. Begin by focusing on the shadows and contours of the nose to establish its structure. Pay close attention to your reference photo to capture the soft transitions between light and shadow, especially along the bridge, sides, and tip of the nose. Use subtle tones to build depth and avoid harsh lines, as the nose has gentle curves and smooth gradients. Let's move on to the lips. Just like with the nose, start with light pencil pressure and gradually build up the base layers. Begin by focusing on the shadows to create depth and a three-dimensional effect. Pay attention to the center of the mouth and the bottom of the lip, as these are generally the darkest parts. Notice that I left the center of the bottom lip empty for now, as leaving it untouched will make it easier to build the highlight later. Last but not least, let's complete the skin. I like to start with a soft, even base layer over the entire face, and I lighten the pencil pressure in places where the highlights will be, such as the center of the forehead, the chin, and the tops of the cheeks. Using small circular motions with the pencil helps create smooth and even coverage while avoiding visible streaks or harsh lines. For the base tones, I like to layer a mix of burnt ochre, peach, and nectar to build a warm, natural foundation. Once the base is established, I gradually start adding in the contours of the face by focusing on the shadows. Pay close attention to areas like the cheekbones, jawline, temples, and the hairline, where subtle shadows define the structure of the face. Build these shadows slowly, blending them seamlessly into the surrounding areas for a natural transition. Layering is key to achieving lifelike skin, so take your time blending multiple tones and adjusting the contrast between the highlights, midtones, and shadows. This gradual buildup of color and light will give the skin a soft, three-dimensional, and realistic appearance. And that's it for this tutorial. I hope you found these tips helpful. Don't be afraid to take your time and experiment with these different techniques. Art really is all about practice and growth. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more tutorials like this. Let me know in the comments what you'd like to see next. Thanks for watching!